Oh, I got to point OBS at the right browser really quick. Where is the IATSE strike? There it is. All right, and I have hit record. Now it's real. I assume you have hit record. Have you hit record?
I have now pressed that button, the red one.
Yeah, there it goes. Cortana or Siri, shut up. How did you even activate? All right. It's Thursday, October 14th, 2021. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are talking about aliens, UFOs and stuff, not the movie. All right. So, hockey got off to an auspicious start for the Rangers.
Yeah, they got destroyed. Whatever.
That was a.
That's how things go in New York. That's what did you expect, right?
Yep. You know what? I expected honestly exactly that. And the whole game, like from the very beginning, all I could think was, "Wow, we're getting outplayed. We're not like they're dominating the ice."
Played in the first 30 minutes. They just got some luck in the first 30 minutes. So actually, we had lots of shots. It looked like we had a lot of zone time. They scored goals in their first few goals on very little zone time. But then after those first few goals, I guess we stopped playing that same way, and then they just took over the game after that.
Yeah, so. But the problem was, in the second half of the game, they had all the zone time, but also they could score pretty quickly when they had zone time, and we just couldn't.
Yeah, well, that's how it goes, right?
Yep, that's hockey. So we'll see how this upcoming game goes, the game that we gave the tickets away for.
We keep getting, we have these tickets. We can't return them. We can't, get our money back. So, it's like that's a sunk cost, right? So even if I give the tickets away for free, I'm not losing anything. If I can't sell them and we don't feel comfortable using them, if someone else wants to use them, I mean, my risk calculus is I'm not going. But if someone else's risk calculus is not the same as mine, I'm not going to judge them or deny them. It's not, I don't feel I have to morally, enforce my... it's like I'll tell people don't ski. I suggest not skiing. I won't ski, but I'm not going to go to like the ski resort and be like out there trying to stop people from skiing.
Well, I'll even be honest. Like, I'm not that worried about my personal safety at PAX Unplugged. The main reason I'm not going is that there's a lot of other reasons why it's too soon for me to go to a convention like that.
I mean, that is definitely part of it, right? It's like even I might feel that I might not get sick, but it's sort of like I recognize as someone who doesn't drive a car that if you drive a car, you are the traffic.
Yep,
right?
The whole moral hazard situation.
Right. So it's like even if I drive, if I'm in a car and I drive on the road, it's like, oh, there's traffic. Well, you caused that. It's you. It's not some external thing, right? So it's like, I think there shouldn't be crowded places, right? Because crowded places are dangerous to all of us now. There shouldn't be. We should try to avoid making crowds. If I go, even if I'm not in danger in the crowd due to vaccination and discipline and mask wearing, I'm making a crowd, and I don't think there should be a crowd.
Especially considering we're at this point now where basically, from what everyone's saying, all these unvaccinated people are just going to get it, and there's nothing we can do. But eventually, they're all either going to get it and have a die, or get it and be at least a little immune for a while. And that's what's going to drive the numbers down eventually.
Yeah, I mean, if the numbers were down to like the way they were in June, the numbers were down, and I almost was like, you know what? They've been staying down. They stayed down long enough. Maybe I'll come outside. Maybe, and then they went up. And if it was been like 2 more weeks, I would have just gone like tore the mask off and it or whatever.
At least in New York, it's what's extra sad is that in New York City, the numbers are slowly dropping, like at this very slow and steady rate.
Tiny. It's like,
but
pretty down.
If you look at New York State or like almost anywhere else in the country, flat or up and in red states like I think I looked at Missouri and Mississippi and those places, like skyrocketing.
Yeah. Oh, let's talk about Missouri. What a great place that is.
Missouri.
So here, this is a story that happens a lot. We could have done this as a Monday news, but whatever.
I had it queued up as a Monday news.
Yeah. So some journalist out in Missouri found out that on one of the state websites, you can read the details, that if you log in and view source on certain pages, you could see people's social security numbers were in the HTML, even though they weren't visible on the page. And that was a, big information leak problem. That's huge, right?
Yep.
Especially from a state system.
Now, it's not a Monday. What that means is that their website was sending those social security numbers to anyone who looked on the website. They just happened
to people who shouldn't have been able to see them.
They just happened to not appear on the screen in a regular web browser, but they likely could appear in a lot of other ways you can look at that same data that they sent you.
Right. Well, for example, they were transmitted to the person's computer. So let's say somebody visited that website who wasn't, nefarious in any way, just honestly using it in good faith, and never saw a social security number with their eyeballs. Their browser cache is on their laptop or whatever or phone is now full of social security numbers that are there. And who knows how secure that device is. So now they have to go to everyone's devices who are using this system and clear all those browser caches and then, see what's what. Anyway, so the journalist who discovered this went through all of the ethical and proper procedures for notifying, not disclosing. The newspaper was like, well, we're going to write a story, but we're not going to publish it until you fix it. Exactly what you're supposed to do. But, of course, the people who run the state of Missouri, the governor, the attorney general,
all Republicans. It's like one of the reddest states.
There. Yeah. All old white Republicans who, A, despise the media and think it's left-wing conspiracy bullshit, so they want to hurt the media, and B, don't understand computers at all, have decided to, they're threatening. They haven't charged yet, but they're, investigating and threatening this journalist, with hacking crimes and whatnot, which is absurd, obviously.
Yep.
But it's a whole thing, and this is not the first time this kind of thing has happened.
This was a very common story in the late 1900s and the aughts in particular.
Late 1900s, eh?
Some kid referred to the late 1900s a month ago on social media, complaining about millennials and boomers, and not only did it strike me in my heart and destroy me and turn me into dust, but I felt like I had to spread it because I really liked the sound of that. I grew up in the late 1900s.
Okay, anyway.
But this was every few months there'd be a story of some high school kid gets in trouble because they went to a website and changed the URL and saw secret biz, because websites basically were all GeoCities back then. None of them were made well. And apparently Missouri still has websites like that. The degree...
Another really common thing that happens is not just the information in the HTML that you view source and you can see it, but another common one is you look at the URL and you see some number in there and you change the number and now you're looking at someone else's account, right?
Yep.
That happens all the time. And it's can you consider that, hacking? I guess that's a Monday discussion.
Yep.
But
you know what? I'll use the definition.
Broad laws covering these sorts of things, which is now a legal discussion.
I would argue that the definition is pretty simple. Again, not the technology definition, and we're not lawyers, but I always go with, if it's accessible to a person using technology directly, and they have not done something specifically illegal, it's fair game.
No, but anyway, so this is a big thing. Happens all the time. It's some fucking bullshit. So I guess there's nothing more to say.
Well, here's the other thing going on here. What's crazy is that this is such an egregious breach that Missouri has probably itself broken laws.
Oh, yeah. Just negligent in making a shitty system. Yeah, for sure.
But especially because it exposed...
Whoever's information was exposed could probably sue the state. Right?
So it's so bad, in the source of the page were 100,000 social security numbers. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of social security numbers. They were all just there because the site was extremely I can't imagine how this would happen unless you were doing, I didn't look at the code myself, unless you were doing something have a form that's going to react to something you type and put all the social security numbers in the source to drive some aspect of that form. It's that level of egregiousness.
This is just... Yeah,
that's PII.
Problem we have in that we're running our society with computers and we do not have enough computer experts. And even if you have computer experts, they are often not given enough time and resources to do things in the proper way, even if they know how. And there's just systems, even simple systems, right, that do something not too complicated functionally, are still architecturally complex, and you have to get a whole team of like expert people, or otherwise it's a disaster.
I mean, a lot of this is because
we've built our entire information society on these fragile, not perfectly made pieces.
But we also can't let all these individual states do all this stuff themselves, because they clearly are incapable of it.
That's why if you look at the best technology stuff in the world, it's like, it's annoying that we have these tech monopolies. We don't like that. We want more diversification, more choices, right? We don't want everyone to be using Adobe or everyone to be using Microsoft. But if there's only so many people in the world who can make a video card driver, it's like, I guess we're all better off using the same video card with the driver made by the people who know how to fucking do it. Then there's 10 video card drivers, but 9 of them are made by teams of people who don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Yep.
It's like, it is, because there aren't enough people to make 10 good ones that are all different.
Yeah. I guess what's most amazing to me is that I expect there to be vulnerabilities like this, especially in like, to be kind of, this isn't big. I expect this from red states more so than blue states, and history has proven that to be true.
I respect it from the blue state. The only difference in the blue state is they won't go after you in this.
But the difference is when these things happen, usually it's more complicated. Like it's a cross-site scripting attack or like a bad TLS. Like it's usually a more difficult to detect and resolve problem. This is the kind of problem that even in the late 1900s was really easy to avoid. This is
probably
like
an old system.
Yeah. But it's amazing to have this degree of a vulnerability.
If someone else had discovered it, right? If it had been some white supremacist, right? The governor or they wouldn't be going after them. They would have done something different. So
yeah, but it's that confluence of anti-media and anti-technology ideas tend to correlate to conservatism.
The newspaper, suddenly this excuse to harass the newspaper fell in their lap, so therefore they do it.
But it goes to a bigger thing. So remember how there were all these different social media platforms that came up around the time of the election, and after Twitter and other media platforms started banning certain right-wing, like racist nonsense, then suddenly all these social media platforms come up, and it turns out that it's very hard to hire enough Nazis to run any technology compared to hiring people who are just regular old unethical or maybe even ethical. So you get this sort of concentration of places with conservative ideas also have broken technology more so than other places. Not that the technology is not broken everywhere. It's just so much more broken in a place like Missouri.
Well, because, that just being authoritarian, right, of any kind means fighting against facts, right? You can't be a fact-based authoritarian. So therefore, you're going to be, with your authoritarian powers, you're going to be, against people who are smart, because smart people believe in facts. And thus, the people who are working for you and are actually trying to make things that you want to happen are not fact-based people, which means they're going to fuck up, right? That's why, you look in a lot of shitty countries that have, authoritarian rulers, and you'll see like how many big projects they have that are just like Pajomkin's villages and those sorts of things. Because they can't actually get anything done.
It might be a little too on the nose, but a big part of when the Nazis came to power in Germany in the 30s was there were a lot of professionals who were angry mostly because they were being overlooked for promotions or were not listened to or respected in their professions, especially in government. And those are a lot of the people who ended up joining the party. And when they effected their takeover, they got the positions of power they'd craved for so long. And they mostly just fucked it all up. And a big part of why the war progressed the way it did was that a lot of very incompetent people were suddenly endowed with absolute power. Hermann Goering was a gigantic dumbass who was very bad at his job. But that's not the image fascists like to show and portray, but that's the reality of how they end up being in civil service. So in some really good news, and there's a lot here, we can't cover it all, we are not experts, go read a book or talk to an old person. So IATSE, the IATSE, we talked about
not the 5 dice game.
Nope. The International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, basically the union that does everything related to most of the media you care about that are not games. They threatened to strike. They have very reasonable demands. And the union voted recently, we talked about it on the show, with 98% plus in favor of striking if their demands were not met. They have now set a date, and that date is real soon, on October 18th, which is this
days, a Monday.
Yeah, that is this coming Monday at 12:01 a.m. If they do not have their demands met, they are striking.
Good.
This might be the biggest strike in modern American history.
I don't know. I don't know how sizes the various strikes are.
Huge. Also, I don't think this union has ever struck before. It's over. This is a very old union. It's one of the biggest. It's very important. It's not on the level of the AFL-CIO, but it's up there.
I mean, if the Teamsters just went on strike and just no trucks moved, like it just shut down the entire, domestic economy of the United States because trucks aren't moving, they could just ask for anything. They could be like,
So, what?
If only they would do that.
So, you know what Netflix...
and ask for good things.
Netflix and all the studios and everyone who rely on IATSE workers are doing right now is they are now forcing everyone to work double overtime to try to finish as much as they can before the strike happens. And it's gotten to the point where the union is trying to help people get hotel rooms to survive and not drive home too tired after an 80-hour work week. And there's a whole shit show going on to the point that we might have to have a lot of boycotts tied in with this strike, depending on how this goes.
Tells us, because it used to be easy to not cross a picket line. It was physical, right?
Yep.
It's in front of a factory, right? In this day and age, the picket line is virtual. So it's a lot harder because you can't deface the Netflix website and put a thing out, right? It's so most people won't even know. So that's a problem number one. And then two, even if you do know, you got to figure out how communication wise, right? What do the union want you to do and not do to help them out? So,
but that gets complicated because some unions are legally barred because of really fucked up laws in America from calling for boycotts. So they may want a boycott. They cannot say that out loud or they're in deep shit. So you have to not just look at what the union says. You have to look at what closely aligned but not formally aligned advocates and organizers say to do, even if they are not actually members of the union.
And sometimes those people aren't saying the same thing. They don't got their message together, and it's hard to try to not cross a picket line.
Sometimes a union has to say out loud, do not boycott, even though what they're actually saying is please boycott.
Yep. So another thing is that I'm seeing, right, we've been seeing this slowly building up, but now it's really coming. Not just this is the biggest strike, but Kellogg's is still on strike, the cereal company.
Yep.
Right. John Deere, they got a strike going on. That's UAW people, I think.
Yep, that there's the UAW strike. That's hot in the news right now.
Yeah. Paizo Publishing, who makes Pathfinder, the tabletop RPG, there's 30 people working there. They're not striking, but they made a union for their little tabletop RPG company.
So
that's pretty cool.
As of today, the United Farm Workers have formally expressed their solidarity with the IATSE strike. They have not called for their own strike, but that is a notable development, and I'm going to keep a very close eye on any news related to the UFW.
Bread and Circus is on the same team. Watch out. So,
right?
So I think what's happening here, I don't know, it might be too soon to say this or maybe too late to say it, but, there was the Industrial Revolution, and then there was a huge labor movement after the Industrial Revolution that sort of made things a little better, a lot better, but not quite good enough.
But we have 40-hour, 5-day work weeks and a minimum wage. Not nearly enough.
Yep. That's the part we were able to keep because after that labor movement, they got so much and then gradually lost it all. And then now we had the information revolution, right? And now there hasn't been, until now, it's taken a couple decades here, a few of them, to have another labor movement. And the labor movement isn't even necessarily related to directly. These aren't computer people on strike here. Some of them, I guess, are digital artists maybe and things like that. But these are not information workers who are going on strike.
Well, because what's going on here is
information workers don't have unions, which is another problem.
But what's going on here is not even so much like the revolution of information so much as that world. It's more that the wages and conditions of labor have gotten materially worse as the depredations of capitalism globally have gotten worse to the point that we're reaching a weird crisis point where a lot of jobs are fake because there isn't enough work for people to do. But at the same time, lots of necessary work is not respected enough to pay any real amount of money. And the entire system is broken to the point that more and more people are starting to realize not working at all might be better for them than working a job that destroys them for almost nothing. Coupled with
the two big
how many people have just died due to COVID, and how many people don't want to re-enter the workforce because it's not safe because of COVID.
Well, it's mostly, I think it's more so, the things that are putting pressure on working conditions are other countries, right? Yep. The Kellogg strike, it's because they're going to move that factory out of the U.S. to Mexico or China or something, right?
Yep. So because of fiduciary duty and a race to the bottom on pricing.
And 2, automation, right? So,
but there's more there too. The pricing race to the bottom is partly because society as a whole is poorer as wealth has become so concentrated that most people can't afford to buy things anyway, and they have to force prices down to be able to sell to the dwindling middle class. Thus, the people who make the things the middle class buy get paid less and less and less. I mean, I'm a product manager professionally. I've been doing product management as a formal discipline for 13 plus, 15 years. And the weirdest thing about my job, and it's bothered me for 6 or 7 years now, is that if I look at anything outside of the capital markets where I have a job, any idea we could ever have, any job, any product, anything, if I put on my product management hat, all I can say is there's no way to make money doing that thing ethically. Full stop. If you follow the law, if you follow the law and make this product ethically, you literally cannot make a profit. It is impossible.
Yep, because other people aren't being paid enough to be customers.
There's a reason why we haven't started a company, because everything we look at would be impossible to do with even the barest hint of ethics.
Yep. So the last thing, just the last thing here to note about labor that you can, take home regardless of your labor situation. So I guess if you have a job of any kind right now, is that you need to realize that inflation in the U.S. this year was 5%-ish, right? Yep. So if you get an annual raise and it's 5%, that actually means that you're just breaking even. They're keeping your salary the same.
Yep.
Right. If you don't get a raise of more than 5%, you're getting a pay cut this year. So if they come to you and 4% raise, that's a 1% pay cut. So you should say something. You should be no, that's actually a 1% pay cut, even though, right? So for example, if you made $10 last year, right, and that allowed you to buy 10 pizzas, they were $1 each, and this year you get a 4% raise. You got $10.40, right? You think you could buy 10 pizzas plus a fourth of a pizza, or 4/10 of a pizza, or whatever it is, right? It's actually because of the inflation, even though you'll get $10.40 this year, you'll actually be buying 9 and a fraction pizzas. So you'll be making less pizzas this year, even with more dollars.
The other thing you should really internalize is that right now is a moment that will not last forever, where for all these reasons and more we didn't even talk about, labor is way more powerful today than it was at any point in recent history in America. So if there are strikes, and then those strikes lead to more strikes, potentially leading to a general strike, the more people are involved, the more powerful it is. And labor's power right now means we have a moment to force change, even if the political system does not support other ways to get that change. One person striking, one small union striking, usually is just a risk and a danger to that small group. But labor is at a moment where the risk is lower and the rewards are higher.
Yeah. So it's also one of the only ways, all these, the inequality, the wealthy people, their money is mostly tied up in the stock market, right? So if we have enough labor go on strike, you can crash the market enough, and that will actually, that's one of the only ways, short of crimes and assassination or other ridiculous things, that you could hurt such rich people.
Yep.
And the only ethical way to hurt such rich people. So there you go.
Yep. So I guess it's just time for things of the day. But anyway, things of the day. So check this out. This is a short animated film from Yugoslavia in 1958 called The Great Fear. and it's just a short 1.5-minute film about some dude reading a horror story, getting a little too into it, and it's pretty funny and cute. But I don't think I've ever seen Yugoslavian animation before, and I just stumbled upon this, and it's really neat.
All right, so it's October, which is everyone's favorite because the anniversary of Geek Nights month.
Yep, October 31st.
also-
We're what, 16 years now? 7?
Yeah.
I forget how many years. Anyway.
It's also the best holiday, Halloween, everyone's favorite holiday. I feel like we've done a good job as a generation, the millennials specifically. I'm going to give us credit for making other holidays, especially Columbus Day, less important, and making Halloween, extending it for about 30 more days than it used to be extended. Everyone hates to see, we're going to see it. November 1st is coming. You're going to see a Christmas tree there on November 1st, and we don't like to see that. But we love to see a pumpkin on September 1st, even August 31st. See a pumpkin. Bring on the pumpkin, right? No one's upset about that.
I love me over the garden wall season.
No one complains about Halloween starting too early. They complain, right? So we're doing a good job, everybody. So in honor of the Halloween, the ambassador of Halloween, the late, great Vincent Price. Let's find some Vincent Price things of the day because there's about 10 infinity of them. Here you go. The excellent movie from 1950. What year was this movie from?
Oh, 1959. This is one of my favorite movies.
Yes, it's an old movie. Rim loves it.
There's a remake.
Yeah.
Like, don't bother.
It's called House on Haunted Hill. And you may not know this, but despite being from the year 1959, this movie is in the public domain. You could do whatever the fuck you want with it. You could take the credits of the movie and put your name on it and say, you could say like, oh yeah, the part of that character that was played by Scott Rubin, not Vincent Price. No. No one can stop you. Public domain. You just do whatever the fuck you want. Remix it, reshare it, make your own edit, whatever you want. Go nuts. But because of that, somebody has chosen to do one of the other things that is you're legally allowed to do with public domain works. Put them up on YouTube in full. So you can just watch the whole goddamn movie on YouTube in full, $0, because public domain. And it's even like HD, really good version. I don't know if they upscaled it or scanned the film or what they did, but
it looks great.
Looks great. Yeah, for a black and white 1959 movie, looks terrific.
This movie, if you've never seen it, all I'll say is it's unintentionally really funny. It is intended to be a 100% serious thriller, but it's got a skeleton, and you might think every time you think you've
skeleton.
Oh,
we love a skeleton.
But the way this skeleton is one of my favorite skeletons, and you'll see what I mean.
Put some bones on a rib.
Nah, that's one of my favorite skeletons. This is more of the skeleton keeps coming back. The skeleton pops up more times than you'll expect, and also this fucking house just has a vat of acid in the basement, and nobody. Like, every character is just like, oh, I guess that's just a thing in this house. And they don't think too hard about it. Chekhov's acid vat right there.
Yeah. And I guess I'll just end by saying, if there's a strike by IATSE and they don't want you to, if they tell us not to, to cancel our Netflix and our HBO Max and our everything, public domain YouTube doesn't make anyone any money.
In the meta moment, Geek Nights Book Club book is still The Tale of Genji. We are powering through our last panel at PAX East Online 2021, Atari Game Design. It's just on YouTube. You can just watch it. We will not likely be at any conventions in the foreseeable future. And we're trying to do a bunch of stuff online that we're not talking a lot about until we actually deliver. So, yeah, I don't really have anything else.
If you live anywhere within safe range of Madison Square Garden and you would like to go to see New York Rangers hockey and we still don't feel safe going, we have tickets to half the home games. I can't go through the whole schedule right now, but if you look at the home schedule, there's a 50% chance we have two tickets to any of those games. Let us know.
Yeah. Just careful.
If we're not using them. It's better that someone else who's willing to go goes than no one's gonna buy them. We'll just
Though if those numbers go down enough, then yeah, we're using all of them again. But not yet.
Yeah. I mean, a listener went to the game tonight.
That game that starts in 20 minutes. So yeah.
Yep. So they're probably there already.
The one thing is, I get the impression because so many tickets are on sale. I wonder if it won't be crowded.
I don't know how crowded it'll be. We're gonna take.
We'll see on TV.
And we'll ask the listener. Let me know how crowded it was.
I mean, we'll see via the way that all New Yorkers know to watch Rangers games that I will not share on the podcast. But if you live in New York, you've heard of it, you know, that's what we're watching. So, yeah, when I was a kid, I 100% believed in UFOs and aliens. I was so sure they existed. I blame television. I blame adults who did not disavow me. I blame magazines, news, like the fucking real newspaper would have articles about a UFO sighting. And I would be like, well, it's in the newspaper.
I don't remember the real newspaper having it, but.
Oh, so when I was a kid, because I grew up in Michigan, there was, this was like 1986 or 87, but a big thing happened in the sky one night, and like all the papers were like UFOs, holy shit, like it was a whole thing. Like, and we saw them, like everybody saw them. Obviously they were not UFOs, but I was a kid. I saw a weird light in the sky, and the next day the newspaper was like, aliens over Macomb County, holy shit.
Right.
Never mind the fact that there's an air base there and like military flights there.
Right. There is one additional thing that I blame, which is that I was a kid who didn't know anything about things that fly, obviously, right? And B, I would look at the sky and I'd see lights at night. During the day, you could see it's a plane, obviously. But at night, you see planes flying and you just see lights blinking in the distance and flying. And all the different planes had different fucking lights. So, you know, I'd be like, you know, sometimes you see a common light pattern. I'd be like, oh, it's a plane. But then I was a kid. I didn't know shit. So I was just so convinced. I was like, that one's blinking white, red, white, red, white, red. What kind of plane fucking does that? Right?
See, I never went down that road, but I think it's because of what my family knew and because we lived next to like a military, like Air Force base. I was used to seeing a lot of planes flying all the time, day and night. So I never thought I saw one. I just thought they existed because I trusted adults and I watched Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah, I mean, that was mostly it also, but
yeah,
just that one additional thing there. Also, right, another thing I would blame is that, you know, I'd go to the library because I was so interested in alien shit, right? So I went to the library and I got like an alien book just in the library.
Oh, I had some of those books. The last one that got me was written in 1968, but I read this fucking book in middle school. And and then I read it again. I actually had a copy of it, so we went to RIT. By then, I realized. But Chariots of the Gods and all the books that cite it are like this cesspool of really plausible sounding stuff, especially if you're a kid before the internet, that even 1 degree of research beyond this book, you find out that, oh, they just made shit up. Oh, they got kicked out of Egypt because they figured something out. Meanwhile, Egypt's like, yeah, we kicked these American nut jobs out of our country because they're nut jobs.
Yep. But also even very good books that in no way were trying to make you into like a UFO conspiracy believer. Something like, you know, Contact, right? I only saw the movie. I didn't read it. But even so, right, just the extraterrestrial idea in popular culture, right, with a kid brain, only, you know, affirmed my very wrong beliefs at the time. Something else I did, right, is, you know, I saw so many Roswell things on fucking TV. And in the early days of AOL, there was actually like a form you could fill out, like to make FOIA requests.
I did the same thing. I asked for all the info on UFOs.
Yep. And the government actually sent me like a brown envelope with a stack of papers with redacted shit in it that I didn't actually read. But I was like, oh man, look at this.
Well, Nevermind, in the 90s, this was like 1995. Remember the alien autopsy?
Oh yeah. I knew about it, but I didn't actually watch it.
Yeah. So, it was obvious it was fake to me, even as a kid, like a middle schooler.
Yeah, I mean, even though I believe that there were UFOs and whatnot, I didn't, you know, obviously I didn't believe everything, right? It's like I'd see National Enquirer type stuff, and I'd be like, that's bullshit.
But
right?
Don't let people gaslight, like, who are trying to back away from this, who are involved. That alien autopsy thing, when it was announced, like before, like there were months of real news talking about it like it might be real before Fox Television eventually was, here it is, we're broadcasting it. Like it was a media event and a lot of people We're treating this like it might be real.
Al Capone vault situation.
It was an Al Capone vault situation. I will be shocked if any of you are young enough to remember that.
People remember it.
Yeah. But I remember this alien autopsy, and I knew a lot of people, including adults, who thought it was real. And then when the autopsy actually aired, they didn't say, oh, I guess I was wrong. They just never talked about it again. And if you asked them, they'd be like, oh, of course that was fake. No one believed that. It was just a publicity stunt.
Or they still believe it.
Or they still believed it, and they're just trying to cover it up, that their shame.
Or people will say, oh, that was fake, but I still believe, it's like.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that messed me up as a kid, just like you said, was that on one hand, I had adults and media acting like there is something to extraterrestrial life and UFOs, coupled with being really deep into like astrophysics and space stuff. And things like the Drake equation and things Carl Sagan would say would give me this plausible, like, oh yeah, statistically, even if they haven't come to Earth, they're definitely out there. Like there's math, 100% they're out there. So you can see why the plausibility snuck in.
Yeah, you have to look at like the specific questions, right? So it's like, what is it likely that there are other living organisms in the universe? It's likely, probably, right? It's like,
well, there's some. We'll talk. So I recently watched a bunch of PBS specials on the current state of the art of astrophysics and this stuff, and there's an interesting, relatively recent theory about that. But anyway, go on.
But I mean, it's possible that we're the only thing, but it's not impossible, right?
Yep.
If someone said, oh yeah, there's some bacteria on this other galaxy, yeah, but like I believe it. That's believable. Right? There's nothing wrong with saying that. But has it visited us, right? Something you're telling me something out there either A, has faster than light travel, B, some kind of wormhole travel, or C, has been traveling for so long that it got here.
Yep. And somehow they always find a redneck somewhere and like harass him specifically while he's drunk in the middle of the night.
Yeah. None of those things are possible. Okay, the government has somehow contacted them but is not revealing them to the rest of society somehow. There's no way.
What conspiracy has ever actually been kept for real secret where there was a secret to reveal for that long? Never mind something so big.
Yeah, it's like that. What would be the motivation of such aliens and the government in making that kind of arrangement, and that the other governments of the world, which are, it's like, the U.S. government doesn't run the whole world. You're telling me that like these aliens came and only went to the U.S. It's like they ignored China.
Why are the angels only attacking Tokyo and not any other place on Earth for some reason?
Well, because there's something underground there.
Oh, yeah, of course. But there was really a thing underground there.
Area 51, it's like the secret defense projects at Area 51. Obviously, that the government doesn't even hide that fact, right? Everyone knows that. But it's like, have they tried to make something like a flying saucer? They probably tried, because it would be really useful if you could make something that flies that way. Yeah, that would be fucking sweet. Better than fucking what we have now in terms of VTOL aircraft, right? But has any of it been successful? If it has, they haven't fucking used it. And if it was successful, they probably would have, and they wouldn't be wasting trillions of dollars on whatevers. Right? So,
yep. But I think there's a generational divide here that I find fascinating, specifically in that we grew up in an era where good cameras were very hard to come by, generally, for most people. Media was very tightly controlled and limited and very mass market. There wasn't really an internet. So basically for all of American history, like up until that point, it was very easy for a message or an idea to be popular without anyone really having any good way to debunk it specifically. So as kids, we'd see all this media and adults and all this stuff, and it would seem very plausible that this stuff is real. But a kid growing up today, even if they read Fate magazine because their grandma had it under the coffee table like I did, and they watched Unsolved Mysteries on YouTube, they could type a couple words into any computer on Earth and everything's debunked instantly.
Yep. It is interesting how the internet at first, in the AOL days,
all aliens,
helped to affirm my alien belief. In fact, one of the first, when I was learning HTML, right, in middle school times, I got like some alien animated GIFs and shit, right? I was making like an alien kind of webpage.
Oh, I was about to say Googling. I was Alta Vistaing for information about ancient Egypt to figure out if the Orion constellation was because aliens came to Egypt, because that was all plausible to my kid brain. And guess what? If I went on the internet, real people didn't have websites yet, but crackpots had websites, and crackpots, the internet was full of crackpots back then, but there wasn't any other source of information except like the library or the encyclopedia that also actually had.
Said the library steered me wrong because I found alien books at the library.
Yeah, my middle school library had Chariots of the Gods in the nonfiction section. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, if you just go and look for aliens in the card catalog,
they were there.
Books that are about aliens. You're not going to find books that are like aliens aren't real. So,
but then the internet got better, and suddenly it was very easy. Like, all the weird things I believed as a kid basically evaporated as soon as I had access to the modern internet. Pre-internet, like Web 2.0, because I had access to everything.
From like AOL Metaphysics chat room, right? AOL.
that one specifically. That one specifically.
AOL had only a few different kinds of chat room categories, and so Metaphysics was one of them, and that's where crackpots, right?
Yep.
And then it's like as soon as you weren't on the AOL anymore, and you're on the real internet, and then it's like the internet got better. It's like, well, I guess that was a bunch of nonsense.
Yep. But now we've reached a point where the internet is full of crackpots again.
Yep.
The difference is we're in this weird...
people are on Facebook instead of on AOL.
But we're in this weird situation where we grew up in a world where we had a lot of false information, was lent a lot of credibility to us, and we didn't have alternative sources of information. Now we have access... Then we had access to real information. We figured a lot of stuff out. Everyone still has access to more real information now than we ever had. We have more access to information than any humans have ever had in all of history. And yet, about 40% of the population actively chooses the crackpots.
So one other thing I want to add is that it wasn't just the information that was available, right? It was also just what was popular culturally, right?
X-Files.
So in the 90s,
X-Files.
In the 90s, X-Files was the biggest fucking deal.
Everybody watched the X-Files. No, young people have not experienced a world where literally everyone is watching the same show. Like, you think Game of Thrones was big? No. When we were watching X-Files as kids, every teacher we had and watch X-Files, our doctors, our orthodontists, anyone you met, someone who was not watching X-Files was a weird aberration.
Right. Now, the shows that come out these days, there may be shows that have bigger overall viewership than those shows did, just because the population of the world is bigger and things have more reach. They're in more countries around the world. But in terms of like percentage-wise, right, it's like if you take a group of 100 random Americans, just at random, and hey, like, all right, how many of you have watched Game of Thrones? It's like, how many is it going to be? It's not going to be 10. But if you do the same thing in 1998, maybe, I don't know what year, 90-something, and like, how many of you watch the X-Files, right? It's like going to be more than the Game of Thrones, even if you said, what's the number of Americans that, watch?
Yeah. Or back up further, like when X-Files was first on, like early 90s, like 94, like that's when that show started. There weren't that many shows on at any given time. Like there weren't that many new shows at any point in like TV history. So there'd be a set of shows that would be on, and around the X-Files era, alien UFO stuff was just very popular. So it just filled out all of pop culture. Aliens and UFOs were like an undercurrent that was just there. And generally, not saying everyone believed in aliens, but they were always like an easy topic of conversation you could have with anyone.
It was, and also it goes back further, right? You got My Favorite Martian going on.
Yep.
You got all the pulp stuff in the 50s, right? You got, there's just so much of it. And then in the 2000s, right? It's not like there's no alien stuff at all anymore, but the sort of extraterrestrial stuff, I think, was reduced a lot. I guess maybe around,
It's hard to say because that's around the time when I stopped watching all TV.
The zombies took over and they haven't let go. I don't know.
We did a show on this years ago. We talked about like the era of aliens and how it shifted into the era of zombies, and then vampires were big for a while. And we were like, when's it gonna be sexy werewolves? Like, when's it gonna keep going around? And that trend just keeps continuing as we loop through
it's never gone. I don't think it's gone back to like aliens aren't a thing. Like how many movies in the movie theater are about aliens? Now, there are some that are like, Alien Predator. Like, okay, it's about an extraterrestrial thing, right? But it's not about, right? It's not like a flying saucer Earth visiting abduction.
There's occasional ones. Like there's the one where the aliens are like teaching the woman the language. Like there's a handful of them, but it's not like multiple long-running pop culture sensation television shows constantly dripping it out there.
Yep.
Also, the long tail of there's a wider variety of entertainment and people have fractured into various different things. You don't have a monoculture of literally everyone I knew on Earth was watching The X-Files in the early 90s while I was watching it.
Mm-hmm. But, it's also just what are, people these days, right? It's like, what did they, usually, you're trying to make this kind of stuff is usually in the horror zone, kind of, right? There's an overlap for sure, especially since it's October. So aliens used to be a thing people would be scared of.
Yep.
Right. Whereas now you're more scared of, AIs run amok, and we see plenty of AIs run amok. Stories going up. Right.
But also a big part of why I think
Independence Day wouldn't really, be a hit today. I don't think.
I think a big part of why alien UFO crackpot conspiracy nut jobs actually went on a steep decline, but eating the horse paste and all this other stuff went on a big increase, is partly that everyone has a really good camera now all the time. And you see a direct correlation between how many cameras people have and how few photos of UFOs continue to come out. So
I always say, like, man, if there's a Bigfoot out there, Bigfoot must have this amazing anti-HD technology. I want some of that so that it can avoid surveillance. Security cameras could only see blurry Scott. Like whatever Bigfoot has to always be blurry when people have 4K cameras in their pocket. Like, I want what Bigfoot's got. So.
Yep. So in terms of actual alien life, as in for real life that did not come from Earth, on one hand, like you were talking about earlier, there's an idea that it's definitely out there, like 99% chance.
I can't say definitely.
Well, like 99.9 whatever repeating chance, just from the ideas spawning from the Drake equation conversations. The idea that
99% on a bacteria somewhere that's not on Earth.
So
it might not be carbon based, but some sort of cell something that. But I guess looks like life.
The thing is, the idea was that we can make some assumptions about, the universe is so big. Because remember, we didn't even discover the fact that there's more than one galaxy until relatively recently in human history. Like, it's if you're young, you might not realize that, like, when they got that first photo from Hubble, like out in space, or like the pale blue dot photo and that was all new relatively recently, and we did not know the extent of the universe, and we still don't know it to a degree. But
yeah, it wasn't until the first Edwin Hubble discovers another galaxy, Andromeda, in 1924.
Yeah.
So not even 100 years ago. But more than 100 years ago, we thought there was only one galaxy.
And then we rapidly got to the point of, there's billions at least of galaxies. Billions and billions and billions out there. So the Drake equation was like, all right, let's do some Fermi calculations. We have a rough sense of how many galaxies seem to exist. And based on our own galaxy, we can say, like, what if 0.00001% of all those galaxies have a solar system that's even remotely like ours? And then 0.001% of those have a planet that's remotely like Earth. And you do these extremely pessimistic calculations. Even then, there are so many galaxies and there's so much time that it puts the odds of life being out there like at 99+ just by the sheer scale.
And that makes the pessimistic assumption also that the life will be similar to our kind of life.
Yeah.
It could be life that does not resemble our kind of life.
So the more modern data has made that a much more challenging conversation because the Drake equation got all the way down into the time in which it could take in the most pessimistic state for electromagnetic radiation to come out of one of those civilizations and the time it would take for it to reach us from anywhere in the universe. And even then, the odds are that we should have seen something by now, and that is a recent conversation that seems to be happening among astrophysics. It's leading into this lonely Earth hypothesis. It is weird that we've never seen anything, and
we just don't know how.
Don't know how is an interesting question though, because
or there's something we don't know still that they can't reach us.
Exactly. So that's where we start to talk about the idea of great filters. Like, is life actually common or not? Or is life
the
common?
bending of space keeping the signals from reaching us?
Or is
are
life
they using a different kind of signal?
Or is life common, but
know?
life is much less likely to get to a certain state of advancement? But the weird part is that even accounting for all those things, if we just look at our own galaxy, we should have detected something. Like the horizon of how far out we're very sure
detected something and not recognized it.
Well, the idea, the horizon of how far out we're pretty sure there is nothing is slowly growing, and the data we have so far really fucks up our understanding of the Drake equation and the statistical odds. The lonely Earth hypothesis is a new one that's starting to gain some well, not new, but is gaining some traction, and it's really leaning on the anthropic principle. And it makes one argument that a universe capable of creating observers must create observers. Otherwise, that whole concept is moot. We exist and we observe. Therefore, it is possible for universes to spawn life, like full stop. And it's all the assumptions we can make.
That's true. Yeah.
That's true. But it's important to say that out loud and agree on it to move on to all this other complex math. So based on the data we have from our own galaxy and the galaxies we've been able to study, it appears that if we look at life like our own, slimeball planets, which Earth was one, planets that are even remotely like Earth, capable of generating the kind of life that became us, Earth is likely one of the earliest of those planets to have formed in the universe, as in it's in the first 8% of all of them that are likely to ever form.
So we just might be the first life, and that, like, if we could wait 1 trillion years, there would be life all over the place.
That is power. In the very least, we are early, so that even if other life is happening, our signals are going to reach other civilizations before theirs could possibly reach us.
It is entirely possible that like, if you had a universe, if you made a new universe and you made it so big and that with such odds of life and life was going to happen, there would still be a first life.
Yep.
And on a galactic time scale, right? How would that life know it was the first life if it was?
Exactly. It almost turns into like, not the halting problem, but you get into similar types of problems that there are no answers to calculate due to the scale and due to the unknowns. But we have a pretty good idea that Earth-like planets, our planet might literally be one of the earliest of them to form.
Could be. It's possible.
Yep. But
it's a plausible explanation.
Exactly. But there's other things we've learned. The Drake equation almost wasn't pessimistic enough because we've learned some other things about Earth that make planets that are Earth-like shockingly more rare than we had assumed for a long time. And the two things that make Earth super weird are, one, we have an electromagnetic field that shields us from dangerous radiation. We've learned relatively recently almost all the Earth-like planets we've discovered when we were saying, oh yeah, there's billions and billions of them out there, do not appear to have that shield.
They're just they have water.
They have water. They're like Earth.
They're a good distance from a nice star, but they're just getting blasted by the star all the time.
Yep. And two, Jupiter. Almost no galaxies we have observed have a Jupiter-like planet also there, and Jupiter is the main reason asteroids don't constantly hit Earth even today.
Well, you want to talk about alien conspiracy, I got to go watch hockey and eat food, but let's just end on people always talking about that Planet X used to exist between Mars and Jupiter, and now it's an asteroid belt. It got some alien war or some shit. That's an old story.
We would have detected that, though, by gravity.
I'd hope. Yeah, if there used to be a civilization, if there was a planet there and it had a civilization, we would have seen artifacts on it with a telescope.
But I guess,
right?
we'll end the show shortly, but what I'll show, the cool thing about the rare earth hypothesis, like the next sort of interesting bit, is that even with all the pessimistic shit I just said, we know how fast life evolved on Earth. And the thing that I didn't really internalize until very, very recently was how quickly on a galactic scale Earth went from no life to shit tons of life. Earth turned into a giant slime ball, like so fast it is unreasonable, which implies that any planet even remotely like Earth would almost inevitably rapidly be filled with slime life.
Well,
Meaning,
but also, how long does a civilization last, right? If you look at a galactic time scale, right? If we end ourselves and Earth goes extinct from climate change or who knows what, then all life on Earth will basically have been a blip, right? The dinosaurs were like an extremely short period of time, right? It could have been dinosaurs. They did go extinct. If nothing came after the dinosaurs, if that was the end of Earth, think about how short that would have been. So if there's a bunch of other planets, they could have all had really short periods of life, and that's it. And there's how would we detect those? There could have been 100 planets that all had dinosaurs and then went extinct, and that was the end. So we never would have seen any of them.
We do have some ways to detect that. There's some interesting ways that are pretty plausible, but there's two big theories about that. One is that there's some filter that we don't know about, and then the debate is, are we before that filter or after that filter? Like the formation
that kind of filter, I'm always going to bet on before, right?
Yeah, but that's a complicated question. There's a lot of debate around it. Like one of the great filters might be the formation of eukaryotic life as opposed to prokaryotic life, because that might have been a fluke.
We beat that one.
But that might be a fluke. It might be that life is really common, but eukaryotic life that can become more complex might be a extremely rare event. Like it happened once and we got really lucky that one thing didn't die. But the other complication of this is that based on that data about slime ball planets, Earth being one of them, we can see a lot of planets. There's evidence of a lot of planets like in our area that for all we know should have been slime ball planets, and we should have been able to detect signatures of some sort of life or some sort of metabolisms. And so far, we have not found any evidence, not even the most remote evidence of a slime ball planet anywhere we can see, despite the fact that statistically, based on our own formation, they should be extremely common, like way more common than the Drake equation even implied. And one theory, the lonely Earth theory, is that that we as observers exist, and it is extremely unlikely that observers could exist. Not impossible, but unlikely. We must exist in a place that is rare in the universe. The kind of place that can support life like us is rare, but us being here is not weird because this is the only place we could have formed.
It's like you have a winning lottery ticket. It's not weird that you have a winning lottery ticket. It's
one in a trillion chances. Yeah, if you already know you have a winning lottery ticket, then you know how rare that event was. That's the theory. We know we exist, so we might just exist in an extremely rare situation. And I think that's enough alien talk because I would like to eat some food and watch a hockey game.
Good.